I'm Erika Donalds. I'm chair of Education Opportunity for America First Policy Institute, and I'm very honored today to have Governor Reeves of Mississippi with us, a member of AFPI's Governor's Council, some of our America First governors. Thanks so much for your participation in that. Governor, welcome.
Hey, Erika, so good to be with you today.
Well, Mississippi is on the map when it comes to education, and especially the reforms that you have led, which some would refer to as the Mississippi miracle. But anyone who has followed your work knows that it is not a miracle. It has been a decade of very hard and consistent work on your part, starting with when you were a lieutenant governor, putting accountability measures in place as the leader of the Senate. Talk us through the very beginning stages of these literacy reforms that you helped to lead and that we're seeing these amazing results of now.
Well, thank you. And imagine my surprise when it was the New York Times that coined the phrase, the Mississippi miracle. And I use that phrase from time to time because it gets people's attention. But as you correctly pointed out, it really wasn't a miracle at all. It was the direct result of many, many years of planning, of work, of good, strong, conservative legislation that we put into place, and then an implementation phase that has gone incredibly well. You go back to 2012 and 2013, we took our initial steps towards school choice. We instituted public charter schools in our state. We created ESAs for our students with special needs, which, by the way, at the time, our students with special needs in Mississippi were graduating at a 25% clip. That has more than doubled and nearly tripled over the last 10 years because kids have more options and parents have more options for their kids. We also changed the way in which we rated our school districts, where we now rate them A, B, C, D, or F. As you well know, parents can understand that, right? And so we had a 7-tiered system, and I kind of consider myself a little bit smart, and I couldn't even figure out what the 7 tiers were and which ones were good and which ones were bad. But every parent knows that an A is good and an F is bad, and parents need that sort of and that level of transparency. So we instituted that in the state of Mississippi. We did things that seem incredibly easy now, like we went back to the basics and we teach reading based upon phonics. And oh, by the way, we have proven that it works. And we also, as you mentioned, and this is incredibly important, throughout the implementation phase, we ensured that there was accountability measures in place, and we continue to raise the level of expectations for our parents, for our teachers, for our administrators, and most of all, we continue to raise the level of expectations for our kids. And guess what happens? Mississippians do what Mississippians do. They rise up and they meet those increased expectations, and so it's been wonderful to see. And where we find ourselves today, and certainly the last couple of years, is success begets success. And the more we win, the more people all across our state want to win even more, and that's why we've moved up on the charts.
Well, and you not just moved up on the charts, you're leading the country in reading gains over the last 10 years. And that's why it's getting so much attention, and people are looking to Mississippi to say, what are you doing that other states can learn from? You mentioned science of reading. We've talked about accountability, but what does that really mean, and how have you sustained those reforms? Because that's the hard part, right? We all get really excited when you pass a new reform, but once it starts to hit and sometimes hurt, because the truth hurts and holding people accountable is not easy, how have you sustained that over the long term?
Well, I tell our team all the time that when you start at 49th or 50th, like we did, moving up the charts is really not that difficult. What's hard is continuing to move up the charts and maintaining it, staying there. And when you think about the fact that in 4th grade reading, as an example, we have led the nation in gains for 10 years, from 2013 until now. But our overall reading results, when compared to the rest of the nation, we've gone from 49th in America in 4th grade reading results to number 9 in America. We've also gone from 50th best in America in 4th grade math to literally 16th best in 4th grade math across the country. And the great thing about our results, Erika, and this is something that I don't think has been highlighted enough, that I want to continue to talk about is that conservative reforms in education, giving parents more options and more transparency and more choices, leads to better results, not just for some of our kids in some of our school districts, but for all of our kids in all of our school districts. Consider this. When you look at fourth grade reading results and just look at African American fourth graders in the state of Mississippi, when you compare our African American fourth graders in 2013 to their peers around the nation, they scored 45th best. Last year, number 3 in America.
Wow.
When you look at Hispanic students in Mississippi when compared to their peers, last year, our Hispanic students scored number 1 in the nation overall for fourth grade reading results and number 1 in the nation for fourth grade math results. And so, again, these conservative reforms are helping all of our kids from every demographic, regardless of race, regardless of background, regardless of how much money their parents make. And that's the real story here, that if you will institute conservative reforms and stick with it, then everybody benefits. And oh, by the way, it is leading an economic resurgence in our state, where last year we had the second fastest growing economy in the entire United States of America in the state of Mississippi. These are results that many people, maybe even myself included, never dreamt possible, and yet we're doing it quarter after quarter, month after month, year after year.
Well, it definitely reverberates into the economy. It gives all of those children access to the American dream that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And therefore, it's going to elevate, as you said, the entire state for the long term as these children continue through school and graduate and themselves are job creators, are leaders in your state. And it will make a generational difference in your state. And you definitely deserve congratulations for leading this. Let's dig just one layer deeper here. We talked about science of reading and focus on literacy, A through F grading systems. I know you also funded reading coaches and additional professional support for teachers. Tell us just another layer of what those accountability measures are, because we know there's no magic bullet, right? Science of reading is important, but it's not the only thing that you can implement to get the kind of results that you have. So what are some of the little talked about reforms that are part of this whole package over the last 10 years that you would want to share with others?
Sure. So let's start with just a fundamental belief. We have a fundamental belief that between kindergarten and third grade, kids need to be learning to read. But once they move beyond the third grade, they better no longer be trying to learn to read. They better be reading to learn. And so we instituted what was at the time called the third grade reading gate. No one liked that name and title, and so they call it other things now. But it's exactly what it was. We said at the end of the third grade, we're going to test every kid. And I know testing is not actually loved by everyone, and I understand that. But you have to make sure that the kids are actually learning. So we test every kid at the end of the third grade. And if they are reading at an adequate level, then they get to go on to the fourth grade. If they are not reading at an adequate level, then we no longer allow for social promotion in the state of Mississippi. If you're not reading at grade level by the end of the third grade, then you stay in the third grade and you focus on it. Now, we did it in what I believe to be was a smart way, because we said, okay, first of all, we're going to test you at the end of the third grade. If you do not pass, you have 2 more opportunities to pass that test. And that obviously comes along with a lot of work from teachers and students, et cetera. But not only did we do that, we also, as you said, we invested in reading coaches. So we spent about $15 million a year from the state. Again, not an enormous amount of money, but certainly not nothing either. We spend about $15 million a year hiring reading coaches that work for the state. We put those reading coaches in schools, number one, to help those individual kids that were struggling. But more importantly, we put those reading coaches into the schools to help teach the teachers to become better teachers. And so we really focused on improving the quality of our teaching. And it has worked incredibly well. Now, the naysayers were adamantly opposed to the test in the end of the third grade, they really claimed that literally they felt like 40 to 50 to 60% of our kids would never be able to pass the test. Well, we've just proved them wrong time and again. And between 2013 and 2020, not only did we have a test, we raised the cut score on that test 3 different times over that period of time. And I think now, as we have moved through the challenges that occurred during the pandemic, it's time for us to raise the test score again. And I have every intention of leading the charge to do exactly that.
Well, I commend you for that, because we've watched other states that have put these reforms in place, and the schools rise to the occasion when you start putting those initial cut scores in place. They don't want to be an F school or a D school, but then they don't follow up with raising the bar again, and then you start to see lagging in the accountability performance for that reason. So yes, it's a great tool that you can use to keep everyone on focused, right, on continuous improvement, that you continuously can move those cut scores up, and therefore, as we've seen, move the students' performance up along with it, and the teachers' focus on making sure that every single child, as you've stated, is capable of learning and reading on grade level. And it's that soft bigotry of low expectations that I'm sure you encountered, because it had always been that way. You'd always been a low-performing state on reading, so that was the expectation a lot of people had, but you didn't. And that leadership is really what impacted, I think, the ability for this to not only get enacted, but then to sustain it for the long term, because you've been able to go from lieutenant governor to now governor and lead the charge in that. So I just congratulate you on that incredible work, and for being such a model for the nation to follow, and that sustained work that you're continuing to do now. With that vein, what do you see as the next step? You mentioned increasing those cut scores again. Is there anything that you're not doing yet that you anticipate wanting to do in this area of increasing academic performance across the state?
Yeah, we're going to continue to look at our accountability model. One of the things that we want to make sure in the state of Mississippi is that we recognize that every kid is not going to go to college, and that is okay. So we talk about our accountability model. It's both college and career readiness, and so we want to make sure that our schools that are focused on getting whether it's 70% or 75% of our kids that are going to choose not to go to college, to make sure that they're ready to go into the workforce through workforce development, workforce training. We're continuously investing in that. You know, I've really said many times before that if you look at where we find ourselves today, and a lot of my fellow governors don't love it when I say this, but if you look at it and you look at 4th grade reading and math scores, we have the smartest 4th graders in the Southeastern Conference. And what that means is that 10 years from now, we're going to have the smartest workforce in the Southeastern United States. And that's going to lead to even more economic growth and economic activity and economic opportunity for our people. The other thing that I would say when we think about what is next, clearly there is a major effort being put forth today in expanding competition, expanding school choice, expanding options for parents in the state of Mississippi. We have a tremendous public school system, and we have made tremendous progress with respect to it. But even the best school on the planet is not perfect or the best school for every kid in that particular district or in that particular jurisdiction or even in our country. And so we've got to give more. We got to get our parents more say-so, more buy-in, and more opportunities to give their kids the best chance for success. We believe strongly that your zip code should not matter. Every kid in Mississippi deserves an opportunity for success, and that comes with a recognition that one size does not fit all. And so as you know, you've been in Mississippi recently and talked with the Speaker of the House and the team, and we're excited about the opportunities that can come from expanding what we did 10 or 12 years ago in ESAs, in school choice, in public charters, et cetera.
Bill, that's awesome to hear. And yes, I was in your state not too long ago and was able to testify in front of that select committee on education freedom that the Speaker of the House put together. And I know they're working on a lot of bills to try to expand education choice in your state. I mean, that's really part of my story, what you just explained, the reason why I'm here today, because I exercise school choice, as many middle-class families do, and picked a school that I thought was the best school for my kids. But then I found out, like you said, with 3 boys, they all learn differently. And just because it's an A school doesn't mean it's an A for every child. And without school choice, you don't have that flourishing free market of competitors that are coming into the space with innovative options so that families actually do have things to choose from outside of their zone public school. And with all the technology today and all the different ways of learning, different types of schools available, we don't want to deprive any family across the United States of some of these incredible options that are out there. And we want to make sure that everyone has those options. And so that's some of what I talked about in front of that committee. I got a lot of pushback. I will definitely admit that. And I think some of it is a victim of your own success because you've had so much success with the literacy initiatives and the accountability. People are saying, well, we don't need school choice anymore because we have great schools, and we've heard that all over the country. But I'm really encouraged to hear that. I know that you're a big supporter of school choice. What kind of bill are you looking for to come to your desk out of this next legislative session when it comes to school choice? Where do you think you guys should start in terms of expanding those opportunities for families who want a different option?
Yeah, well, I start with I'm for universal school choice. I'm for giving the parents the options to choose because that is the most likely avenue for success. And something that you said that just strikes me, and I think it's important to reiterate, is it's about every individual child because it is very possible that one's local public school, I talked to someone literally in the last week, where their local public school, which is one of the highest rated schools in the entire state, is really good for 2 of their 3 kids. But for their 3rd child, it just wasn't the environment that was perfect for that particular kid, so they had to go seek another option. Now, they happen to have the financial means to do that, but I know you have 3 boys, I have 3 daughters, and they are all different. And the environment that may be best for one may or may not be best for the other, and you have to make individual decisions based upon what's best for those individual kids. I would love to see a universal school choice bill get to my desk. I know, and you probably heard, that's a tall task, but I'll remind every single one of our legislators that the very same people that are fighting our efforts to expand school choice in Mississippi, every single one of them opposed our efforts to institute the 3rd grade reading gate. They all opposed our efforts to expand options back in 2012 and 2013. They all opposed every piece of legislation that passed that led to the Mississippi Miracle. Now, a lot of them now are taking credit for it, right? Because they raised money off of the successes that we're having, even though the coalition of the status quo fought us every step of the way. And now those same people are trying to make the argument, hey, well, look, we've had this success, so why would you want to change anything? Just because we've always done it a certain way doesn't mean that's the best way to do it going forward. And so I'm hopeful, I'm cautiously optimistic. We certainly have strong leadership in the House of Representatives in Mississippi that is just very, very focused on this effort. It's their number one priority. The Speaker has made that very clear. The head of the Education Committee has made that very clear. And so any bill that gets us closer to giving parents more options and more choices and closer to universal choice, I think is a step in the right direction. And I'm hopeful that we can get something done in the 2026 legislative session.
Well, we'll be there to support that effort. We have seen across the country, there's no reason to tinker around the edges. We've got 17 states now that have passed universal school choice policies, And research has shown that you are going to get the same negative pushback whether you're advocating for a small program or full universal choice. It's the same pushback. It's from the same people. And so you may as well go for broke with being able to get every single family the choices that they deserve. Actually, universal choice, and we go back to free market principles, right? When you have more consumers in the marketplace, meaning parents who are making choices, not only does it increase quality across the board, but those innovative options that we are seeing across this country come into the marketplace when it comes to education, more of those are going to come into Mississippi to be available to those families that do exercise those choices. And that's really the bottom line. You don't want to pass too small of a program because these innovators, these people who are thinking about starting schools or coming to Mississippi with a new school concept, are going to hesitate to do so if there aren't enough families that have that exercisable choice option. And so that's why we encourage, the maximum participation, because families deserve to have that choice. And public schools, as they've done in Mississippi, are going to rise to the occasion in order to serve their students better when there are other options out there for families. And so I just commend you for all of the amazing success that you have had as an education leader in Mississippi. You have made, like I said earlier, a generational difference in your state and ultimately in this country, because each one of those children are going to achieve the American dream because they are able to read, to understand the beautiful history of America and be able to defend it, something that they cannot do if they don't have the power of literacy. As we look forward, Governor, you of course, have such an incredible track record, but what do you hope lasts well beyond you that we haven't already talked about today, whether it comes to education or just the vision that you have for the state of Mississippi?
Well, I'm excited about our economic future. My background is in, not entirely unlike yours, I worked in the investment world for a long, long time before I got into government. And so I think really in terms of when you believe in freedom and when you believe in opportunity like we do, then really there are very few problems that governments talk about that would not be solved if everybody in my state had an opportunity and the skills that they needed to have a $60 or $70 or $80 or $90,000 a year job. Jobs, providing for your family, and having a family with two parents in the home can truly solve most of the problems that government is trying to address today, because the reality is government's not very good at solving problems typically. And so that's really when I think about what people remember about my tenure in government, I've dedicated a big portion of my life to it because I care about my state. I really hope that they remember the increased skills that every Mississippian that's gone through either our K through 12 system, our community college system, our institutions of higher learning system, the increased skills that every person in our state has, the job opportunities that have been created by nearly $45 billion in capital investment in our state in my first 5.5 years in office, that literally have created tens of thousands of jobs paying well above the national average, which led to Mississippi literally having the second fastest growing economy, but also the second fastest growing family income in America in 2024. That's what I'm most excited about. And I'm most excited about spending the 2 years and 2 months that I have left growing on that and expanding those opportunities for the over 3 million people in my state.
Well, I know as we look ahead, President Trump is looking to Mississippi as well. One of the promises that he made to the American people was for universal school choice and returning education to the states. Mississippi, of course, with the work that you've done, being well deserving of that power from Washington as we break down the Department of Education and return that power where it belongs in the states. And as you, Governor, continue to work along with your legislature for universal school choice, something that every single parent deserves. Thank you again for joining me and for being part of America First Policy Institute's Governor's Council. Your leadership and your model of wonderful literacy results in Mississippi, the so-called miracle that's not so miraculous when you think about all the work and the long-standing efforts that you've put into it, definitely is a model for the rest of the nation to follow. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Erica. Thanks to American First Policy Institute and really everyone that's fighting to make America great again, and everyone that's fighting to ensure that we implement policies that give every American a chance at success, regardless of where you live or who you voted for in the last election. That's what makes this country the greatest country in the history of mankind, is opportunity. And the policies that we're fighting for give more people and more Americans that opportunity. So thank you for what you're doing as well.